Thank you so much for joining in this conversation about different style of sexuality and different version of sexuality that is not mainstream. And I realized, if nothing else, a takeaway that I did from the past week of me attending dominatrix convention in Los Angeles, California, was that the culture itself is completely misunderstood. And if you have heard certain things, their perception and judgments and things that we tend to see and judge these people who are participating, who are part of the kinky community, they are completely misunderstood, and we tend to look at that and say, oh my god, they're weirdos, right? Like, why would they be interested in certain things? But in reality, there is so much going on behind the scenes that not everyone will truly understand and will be able to share the same version or the same idea about the kink community or certain levels of BDSM, right? And so let me share with you what I thought I was getting myself into. Well, first of all, I've started embracing this dominant side to me rather recently, and I would say probably within the past year I have realized that there is a dominant side to me that before that I was very much into being I wouldn't say submissive, because there was not even the dynamic happening like that at all, but more of kind of sweet, they call it vanilla, right? And I was perfectly fine with that, right? But until recently, and especially when I started embracing the other side of myself, the darker side, right? I have realized that there's more to my own sexuality, and there's so many different levels to my own sexualities that I wanted to explore. And I started reading books on being dominant, being in power really attracted me for the reason of being in control of the male, right? Being in control, period. The power dynamic is what really enticed me to look into this subject more. So I started reading books on this. There is a really cool book. Oh my god, what is it called? I'll have to share that with you later on. I can't remember, but there's this one book that I do my books through audio that I have absolutely loved listening to, and that is where the author mentioned dominatrix convention in Los Angeles. And I was like, okay, let me look into that. And that was like back in April, right? That was like long time ago. I've learned that there is one truly happening in Los Angeles, and that is when I did like a call out in a group if anyone was interested to attend this convention with me. And there are a couple of girls, some part of my team, some past clients, and some friends of friends. We've collected a group of girls, and we were all going together. So that was fun, just preparing for it, thinking what outfits we gonna get, and putting the looks together. So that was so much fun just to begin with, thinking that we can't embody this image in a real life, but we can embrace that particular clothing style or anything pertaining, like we could wear something a little more out there at the convention because it is acceptable and it is part of the style anyway, right? And so the preparation, like leading up to the event, was really fun, right? What I expected from it, I don't think I had a certain perception of what it's gonna be. I knew that I'm gonna get dress up. I knew we're gonna have some classes. I knew we're gonna have some play parties and fetish ball and things like that. But I really had no idea what it would look like. I've never attended an event like that, so I had no clue. And that was part of the excitement, because like, oh my God, like what is it that we're gonna do at the fetish ball, right? Or what is it that we're gonna do at like red carpet event? So things like that. Like the anticipation itself was through the roof, and you know, not knowing what's going to happen at the event was really adding to the thrill. Now, about 2 weeks before the convention, they sent out emails to everyone that LA County mandated vaccine requirements, so everyone had to have a proof of vaccines. And what I learned to later on, that state of California and San Francisco itself, we even went to the spa, and they required for you to show the proof of vaccines. I'm not going to share my opinion and all of that. That's completely another question. I thought, you know, they wouldn't enforce that, but they were pretty strict about it. So if this continues, and if you want to continue, if you want to attend this kind of event, just know that they're pretty particular about this. So if you really want to attend, you need to get your record straight on that, right? And there is one that will be happening in New Orleans over the Halloween. So if you want to attend DomCon New Orleans, you have this opportunity to do so. It's going to be over Halloween. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would love to attend. Certain logistical things are not working out for me, but yeah. Anyway, on to what happened at the event itself, right? On the first day, by the way, I switched to from being an attendee to being a vendor. And I had like my banners as a boudoir photography studio. So I switched my ticket on to being a vendor at the convention. But the convention itself consisted of lots of different people and craftsmen doing their own different restraints that were beautifully made. I actually got some for myself, and they're expensive, but they're so beautiful and very, very good quality materials that are being used for those things. It's not something that you would buy on Amazon. It's not something you would buy on eBay that I used to. I thought that was the shit, but not at all. So now I know the difference. Now I know the difference in quality of materials that the true professional, I wouldn't say professional, although it is meant to be an event for professionals who are within the industry, and it is falling under the sex industry. Although and in some states it's a little bit more, they're a little bit easier on that, and like California or LA, they have public dungeons, they pay their taxes, nothing like nobody's really having anything against that. If we go to, for example, our state, right, or Virginia, Norfolk, I was speaking to a lifestyle dominatrix. She's not a professional, that is out of Suffolk, and she runs a club for other lifestyle dominatrixes. She said that there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to organize something like that. So some states are a little bit more relaxed about that, like California, and some states like Virginia, they're not having it at all. There's a lot of things that you would have to go through in order to open up a dungeon or something like that, right? Or just like use this, indulge in the profession or in the professional manner, right? Should I say that? Anyway, and yeah, so when we went to the convention, there's people who are doing latex skirts and dresses and different restraints and different jewelry and collars, chains, and it was just really so much fun to walk around the convention. And so I walked around the convention itself, and then I see this picture. There are these women who are dominatrixes leading their pets on a leash. They're all dressed up in leather, both girls and pets, with masks. They're leading them on a leash, and I'm like, I really want to have a slave. That's there's something about it that I really like. I want to have a slave, right? By the way, girls, if you're watching, I see Heather is joining me. Heather has something to say about this whole shebang, right? And I see these girls walking around with their slaves, and I was like, I really want to have one. Like, how do I get a slave, right? And so before that, we got friendly with one Russian, which good for me, right? I speak Russian, Domina, and she said that she could find me a slave. I was like, yes, let's do it. So that was, we didn't know where this was gonna come from, but it was kind of like, hey, I want to do it, whether it happens or not doesn't matter, but like, we're here, let's have some fun, and like, let's do things the right way, right? And so another big thing that has really my first impression about this whole thing, what started with me watching how would you say that? Demonstration of the technique with the whip, right? There is a technique. I had no idea that there is actually technique to that. And the more I observed how it's done, the more I realized there is actually the technique to the whole process. You don't just whip, you whip it at a rhythm, right? That's one thing I had no idea that, this was part of the thing, right? I thought, oh, you just have a whip and you whip your submissive at whatever rate, however you want, which you can still do if you play, right? But the proper way, or the way it's done, the person is standing and being hit with the whip at a rhythm, right? And another thing I've discovered, you don't have to experience pain, or you can set your own limits of how hard and where you are allowing. If you are on a submissive side, you can set your own boundaries on how hard the other person, the dominant person, is allowed to really use the whip on you, right? Also, you can set your own boundaries on to, what parts of your body they're not allowed to touch. So there is so much consent that goes into this process that really, if you start playing, especially if you're playing with a new person who you're just learning to play with, there is always a conversation about why you're doing this, what it is that you want to get out of this, what is completely out of your range, like what is your what are we not allowed to do, and the signals as well, because if you reach a level where you can't take it anymore as a submissive, right? You and we all know this, right? You can use yellow or red as a symbol, but what happens if your mouth is completely covered? You can't talk, right? So there are other additional ways you signal to the other person to stop the game. You can pinch the other person to stop the game, or it's good practice to give them something heavy and to hold in their hands, keys for example, that they can drop. If they're fully tied up and they can't move, they can have something in their hands that they can drop, signaling, if you are in a dominant position, to the dominant person that this is red, you're not allowed to continue, it's done, right? So there's so much detail goes into discussing the terms of the game that I had no idea how the whole process really works. So That is what I've learned. There is always a discussion before the playtime. What is allowed, what is not allowed, what are the signals that will signal the other person to stop the game, right? Also, during the process, sometimes there is what is called submissive ego, when a submissive does not want to say that it's hurting them, right? Or it's too much, and they continue struggling and putting through this. And that is, again, goes against the consent of the person who is leading the game. And so there's so much that could go wrong, and that is why this culture is so misunderstood, because people don't abide by the rules. People don't set the rules to create the safe environment for the game to happen, right? And another thing that I've learned from the whole experience is there is also an aftercare immediately following the game. So, and the aftercare is something that you also discuss before the game, right? Aftercare could be cuddling for an hour. There's always, they say you always gotta have water with you. Aftercare could be just talking it out and sitting next to each other. So whatever your version of aftercare is, it has to be part of the process no matter what. Before a conversation before the game, to set the rules and boundaries, and what would be the symbolic, like what would be the symbol to stop the game itself, and then the aftercare. So there are 3 parts to the process, right? The whipping itself, and that was big part of what I've experienced myself. I haven't experienced on myself because I was not in a role of a sub, nor did I want to experience that. I personally don't enjoy pain, so that is something that I was not, I didn't want to experience. However, what I observed is that there is a very technical element to it as well. So if you are whipped, and there are different types of whips, and you have to, each one is being used differently. There's a technique for each one, right? Some sting a lot and some don't, right? And so what I've learned is that there's different techniques for different types of whips, and it's not just whipping. There's a very steady rhythm that they're going while they're playing a game, right? So that is the part that is so, those three pillars, if they're not being correctly used, or if they're not being correctly implemented, is what gives this whole BDSM practice. And sorry, somebody was calling me. So yeah, it's very, very important to abide by the rules and really set the rules and boundaries in place for sure. I will tell you that a lot of my perceptions of the whole culture has changed. The idea has changed. There's certain things that I've witnessed I did not expect. I've also went to see, there's a public dungeon, which we don't have here in Virginia or North Carolina, but in LA, there are actually public dungeons, and you literally go inside, you bring your bag of toys, and you bring your submissive in, and you can play on different equipment and sets, and there are crosses and benches and tables and chairs and cages, and so they have these different areas set up for all sorts of play that you can indulge in, right? And so you pick your spot that you want to play on, and you take your sub, or you meet one at the dungeon itself, and you basically set your rules, and you take and you go and you play, right? And everyone brings their own whips and chains and paddles, and certain things I've experienced. So that at the dungeon, it was not a sex club, so they could not have sex, and there actually watch people that are walking around making sure everything. And they they're enforcing those masks too. They're like, you don't have your mask on, put that on over your nose, you know. They were pretty strict about that. And if there is a situation where, you know, somebody's getting super into the game and enticed and hard and erected, right? There's no penetration allowed, so they would actually stand over you and tell you no penetration, right? So it's purely for submissive and dominant game, right? For bondage, for ropes, right? So they're very, very strict at that particular club. And again, each club would be different, but that was actually very interesting to observe that everyone is playing their own little game in their own little corner, and me in specifically, I'm the observer, and I would walk from room to room just seeing how they are playing and observing what's happening, right? And for the majority of it, it was basically a person being tied to a bench or to a wall or to whatever prop that is, and they're being used whips on, right? And there was this one, I don't even know if he's guy or girl, because it was definitely a he, but he was wearing a wig of different colors each time. And so he told me that he wanted to be walked on, right? So there are all these people who have their own little kinks that they can indulge in during the process, right? Let's see. One biggest shocker for me was walking on the first day. Like, imagine me coming to a dungeon for the very first time, walking into a room, seeing a naked guy all curled up in a ball, all tied up in restraints, and there are 5 girls literally kicking him in the balls. Wow, that was hard for me to watch, but he actually, knowing that he actually enjoyed that, and that is exactly what he asked for, definitely gave me a completely different perspective on how different of desires of different people, right? What they want, what they want out of this, right? So but for me in the beginning, that was a shocker. That was like the biggest shocker for me. Moving on throughout the process, I have realized that, you know, no big deal, right? Because I've witnessed that so many times, and everyone has their own style of the way they play the games. It was definitely very interesting to observe, right? So on a day 2, we are sitting getting coffee in the morning, right? And there's this guy walking by us, and he goes, you know, I hear for the convention, so the conversation started, and by the end of the conversation, he asked us to get him in on a game, and he wanted to be a slave, right? So we're like, okay, cool. So we started the game and we started playing. I had his phone number, so I was the one basically telling him what to do. So I told him to paint, like find the black nail polish and paint like his middle finger black. Like he needed to complete a certain number of steps. For, you know, to play in the game, right? And then I also had him like put the toothpaste on his hand and put a handprint on his chest, symbolizing that he's now initiated himself into being our slave, right? Or my slave at this point. And so in the evening, when we actually went to the dungeon, I had him on a leash and he massaged my feet, right? So, and by the end of the evening, so I'm kind of like tired, walking around, and I see this room of girls that are playing with their slaves. And so there's one slave. By the way, when I say slaves, like that is another takeaway for me, was that it's not a derogatory term. It's not a derogatory term. It's within the game. They're performing the service for the woman, the goddess, the mistress, whoever that is, to serve the feminine, whatever that might look like. And each one is different, right? And so I'm walking into the room, and there's like game going on, and it's really fun to observe because there is a slave fanning every girl in a room. That's his task, right? Another one is wearing a piglet nose. That was hilarious to observe, holding this little it's like a paddle whip. I don't even know what it was, but it had like a little heart. So he would stand there and hold as if like he's some kind of pillar of I don't know what. So it was, and so there was an experienced woman who was leading the game, and she would tell them what to do and how to do it, and when then the twerking contest started. I mean, it's fun to observe. It's like bizarre to not know, like if you are an outsider and you walk into this, like for me on the first day, that's how it was. I was like expected to see some stuff, but I had no idea. So I would walk into the playroom and I would realize what's happening. I was like, holy shit. I didn't know that was going on. This is like really, really bizarre to like really observe. By day 3, I've got used to what I was seeing. I was seeing all sorts of male genitalia being humiliated, degraded, put in cages, pulled on, like almost, it's very painful to observe. But if you're not there, you will take that out of context and you would have no idea what's going on. That's why it's so important to really be in the moment, be there to understand that it's actually part of the game. And so what I've realized, you know how in the childhood we used to play pretend games, right? We pretended to be pop singers and sailors and princesses and whatnot, right? We had our fantasy play. So that is just the adult version of the game. And there is nothing wrong with it. It has sexual kinky elements to it, but it's just the adult version of the same freaking games we played in the childhood, right? And that is how you set the fantasy element, and you don't have to take it to the extreme levels, and you don't have to experience pain or give pain to someone. You can play by your own rules, by your own levels. Like there are levels to the game itself, and there are certain protocols as well. You know, there are 3 pillars that you abide by. It's not just I do whatever I want, however I want. No, you set the boundaries. You have the conversation. You have the game within those boundaries. If it's crossing the line or if it's too much, then you signal to the other person. And then aftercare afterwards is so important. There are 3 pillars that you have to go through, you know, and the kink community is really, really big onto enforcing the consent and the 3 pillars. So it's not I invent whatever I want to invent, right? So there's technique to whipping. There's just so many different elements that I had no idea as a novice. I had no idea that you know, certain rules existed for that kind of stuff. And that was fascinating. Like I'm literally a different person after this. Like what I've seen, what I've experienced, what I've witnessed, I'm completely a new person. I have respect for the culture itself, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't play within the protocol. And that is why it's getting a bad rep around, you know, outside the community. But if you are part of the community, you are playing by the rules and you are abiding by the pillars and you are abiding by the protocols, right? You absolutely doing everything within the level of consent that you're given. Right? So there's so much that I've learned, I've experienced, and I've realized how much I didn't know, how much I used to judge, how much I had not respect that kind of community. And now I have a lot of respect, a lot of understanding, a lot of psychological understanding why certain people do that, why they want to be certain, why they want to play certain roles, why a slave wants to be a slave, right? Or why a dom wants to be a dom. I have a lot of that understanding, and with that I am almost a new person. And I used to judge them, and people who would play, I have like, that's erased. I have so much respect. I have so much understanding of the culture. I have, it's just, you have to be there to really witness, to really understand what goes into the game, right? And you have to, if you have an opportunity, and if you are into stuff like that, bondage, submission, dominance, restraints, ropes, that is definitely something you should totally see for yourself, because it will open up new doors and new understanding and new world for you, right? You will start seeing things differently, and you will start respecting the culture, right? And yeah, so it's been something unexpected, but it has left me a different person, right? It has left me a different person, and I really now know why, how, where, and why they're doing that, right? Like, it's given me a lot that I didn't expect to take out of it, right? It's just the whole understanding, right? I'm teaching you mentorship. Like, I'm a mentor for the 6-month program on creating fantasy element in your life, right? Well, here it is, right? I've experienced a different kind of fantasy element, but it's part of the big picture. It's part of the big picture. And whether you want to be kinky, or whether you want to stay in your norm, within what we consider the norm, you have a choice. But to me, it's the same game we used to play when we were little kids, right? We embodied different roles, and that is exactly what it is. And it is exactly, you have to see it for play. I thought, oh, they're just twisted in the real life like that. It's not like that. It's just a game. It's just a game, only within the boundaries of the game itself, right? And it's so funny to observe that, to watch little dogs jumping, pretending to be dogs. It's bizarre. It might sound bizarre because you're not there, but when you're there, you actually enjoy doing that and watching that. It's very entertaining, and it's really, letting loose out of that normal society that is telling us to do things a certain way, and to be a certain way, and to abide by certain rules. And it's so hard to really be within those rules, because we never left being kids, right? There's still all of that in us. So I'm not seeing any questions, you ladies. I'm not seeing any questions. So if you do, you can send you can put them in comments below. However, I am about to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and it was a pleasure talking with you, and I will see you later. Since we don't have questions, I'm gonna let you go, and I will be back with a new subject, and maybe at that time I will tell you more about it.